He told her she could wear the dress, but only after dark. The first night she did, she vanished from her room without a sound. What came back wasn't utter. Not exactly. They say the railroad brought life to Deadwind, but also something else. Something that traveled quiet under cover of night. Something that watched. I was staying at the Miller homestead that summer. Hired on as a carpenter, though most days I just helped keep the place standing. The Millers had money once, you could tell, by the bones of the house. Tall windows, wide porches, fretwork curling like lace on the eaves, but now the paint peeled in strips, and the floorboards groaned like they were tired of being walked on. He was a strange man, Mr. Miller, soft-spoken, sharp with numbers, and cold as the grave when he looked at you. But he had a daughter, Claire, and she was the only warm thing left in that house. Claire was quiet, not shy, but like she was listening for something only she could hear. She'd sit by the window for hours at dusk, fingers curled against the sill, staring out across the dry grass like it might whisper her name. Then one morning just before the summer sun, Mr. Miller brought home a box. Not just any box. It was velvet-wrapped, deep blue with a satin bow so fresh it looked tied by a ghost. He handed it to Claire in the parlor and said, "You can wear it, but only when the house is sleeping." She didn't ask why, just smiled and nodded. That night I heard footsteps in the hallway, soft, slow, like a dance. When I stepped out my door, there she was, Claire, wearing a gown the color of blood just before it turns black. It shimmered like it had a pulse of its own, and her eyes weren't it the same. I opened my mouth to speak, but she turned and glided down the stairs without a sound, not walked, glided. I followed. Through the front door, out into the silver dark where the wheatfield began. She walked into it barefoot, dress trailing like a flame, and as I reached the edge of the field she was gone. No rustle, no cry, just empty stalks swaying. Then something moved. Not her, something else. Something taller than any man I'd known, but bent like it was folding itself to fit the night. And in its arms, the red dress. But not Claire. Not anymore. I didn't sleep that night. Not a wink. Just sat in the parlor with the shotgun across my knees, listening to the old clock tick like it was counting down to something wicked. At dawn I stepped outside, half expecting to find that dress torn and bloodied in the field, but instead, there she was, Claire, standing barefoot on the porch, face clean, hair neat like she'd never left. Except her eyes, they were hollow. Like whatever made her Claire had been scooped out and replaced with something cold, something borrowed. I asked where she'd been. She smiled and said, "I went dancing." Mr. Miller didn't ask a thing. He just nodded to her, then locked the front door behind her. Tight deadbolt, chains, even nailed a plank across the bottom. That afternoon I saw him take down every mirror in the house. Didn't explain, just muttered while yanking them off the walls. "They find you in the glass." That's how they remember the shape I should've left right then. I should've saddled my mare and ridden for town and never looked back. But I did. Tet. Because that night, the dress came back out. Claire stood at the top of the stairs, barefoot again, glowing in red silk, but this time she didn't glide, she floated. Like the air held her up, like the ground had stopped claiming her as its own. She moved down the hall past my door, and I swear to you, I saw something behind her, not following, no attached. A shadow, twice her size with limbs too long, and too many joints it flickered like smoke, but dragged itself beside her like a tethered dog. Its head tilted toward her neck, breathing her in. I couldn't move, couldn't even blink until Mr. Miller's voice rang out from downstairs. "Claire, take it off." Her body snapped forward like a puppet had yanked its string. She crumpled. The dress slithered down her shoulders on its own. No hands, no motion, just gravity and silk. And then that thing behind her. It hissed low and wet like wind through a broken flute, and it vanished, gone in a blink. Claire sobbed on the floor, shivering, and Mr. Miller. He didn't comfort her. He just picked up the dress, held it at arm's length, like it was venomous, and shoved it back into the velvet box. He nailed the lid shut, then turned to me, face pale as candle wax, and said, "It's not the dress, it's the hour night. Opens doors we were never meant to knock on." I asked him the next morning, didn't plan to. Hell, I didn't even know how to start, but something about the way he sat on that porch staring at the nailed-shut box like it might start whispering again, it begged the question out of me. Where'd it come from? He didn't look at me, just lit a match, let it burn too close to his fingers, then finally said, "It wasn't supposed to be hers, it was made for a woman who never saw the sunrise." He told me the story like it was carved into his bones years ago, before Claire was born, had been married to a woman named Evelyn. By all accounts, she was radiant, laughed too much, danced, even when no music played, and wore midnight colors in the middle of the day. She loved the Strange Things books with no authors, paintings with eyes that moved whispers from a canyon floor. One day she came across a traveling merchant. The kind that didn't stay long and never set up shop, just appeared at crossroads when the wind changed. He offered her the dress, didn't ask for coin, didn't name a price at all, just said, "She may wear it at night, but she will never wear it alone." Mr. Miller begged her to turn it down, but Evelyn, she was curious, too curious for her own good. The first night she wore it, she went walking, didn't tell him or didn't say goodbye. They found her 3 days later, dancing in a dry riverbed, feet, blistered eyes, wide open dress, torn like it had been yanked by claws, still moving but not breathing. He buried her with the dress, or so he thought, until the night Claire turned 17. And the box showed up on their doorstep. No name, no note, just the same velvet wrap, the same bow, like it had come home. Mr. Miller never opened it, didn't dare until the day Claire found it on her own. He thinks the dress calls to the ones who carry the blood that Evelyn passed on more than her smile to Claire. She passed on a promise. At night, he said, his voice dry as dust, "They can't say no, not to the dress and not to what waits behind it." That night he tried to burn it. Dragged the box out to the shed, poured oil on it, struck the match, but the flame wouldn't catch. It curled and hissed and died in the wind. I watched him try twice, then thrice, but the box never burned, and neither did the dress. Later, while the house slept and the wind howled something cruel, I found Claire standing in the hallway again. Naked feet, empty eyes, and the red dress glowing like a wound that wouldn't close. That night was colder than any before it. No reason for it. No storm rolling in, no clouds thick enough to hold the chill. But the air inside that house turned sharp, like breathing through broken glass. I was awake, hadn't slept a minute since the night before, and I wasn't about to start then. Claire moved past my door again, same as before. Dress clinging to her like a second skin, her feet silent on the old wood. But this time I didn't hesitate. I followed, not creeping behind her. No, this time I stepped out in plain view, let her hear my boots creak the floor. She didn't turn, didn't speak, just opened the front door like it had been waiting for her. The night swallowed her whole. She walked into the wheat, same as before. But the field wasn't still this time. It was alive, stalks, twitching, bowing like something passed between them, something invisible, something hungry. I moved fast, boots crunching dry dirt, and as I reached the edge, the wind hit me like a wall. It howled through the grain, lifting the dress like flame. Claire stood in the center of a circle. Wheat flattened all around her as if something vast had landed there with wings spread wide. And in front of her, it rose, that thing, the shadow with too many limbs, its spine bending backward like a hanged man caught in mid-drop. But it wasn't smoke anymore. It had form, skin stretched too tight, a mouth in the middle of its chest, open, sucking the air in like it could drink the night. And it spoke not in words, not the way you or I would hear, but inside my skull, a hum, low and deep, that pulled at the roots of my teeth. Claire lifted her arms, and the dress began to tear, not from strain, not from force. It peeled itself, like it wanted out. The thing opened its chest mouth wider, and from within, I swear to God, I saw faces. Hundreds, all of them wearing the dress, screaming without sound, locked behind eyes that never blinked. I stepped forward just one step, and the creature turned. It saw me, and it smiled. Not with a mouth, not with teeth. It smiled with every face in its body. And that's when Claire screamed, not the girl's voice. Not anymore. This was something raw, something ancient, like a woman being dragged through centuries. The dress snapped, a violent pop, like lightning tearing silk, and everything went dark. I woke up in the field alone, the sun bleeding over the hills, Claire's footsteps in the dirt behind me. but never leading back, just forward deeper toward a place where the wheat grew black. And the wind never stopped whispering. They found me just after noon. One of the ranch hands saw me lying in the wheat shirt, torn lips cracked from breathing in the dust. He said my eyes were open, but I wasn't in them. They carried me back to the house like a corpse that hadn't decided whether to rot or rise. Mr. Miller stood on the porch, arms crossed, not relief in his eyes, just recognition. Had seen this before. Inside, he poured whiskey down my throat, till I coughed up the taste of ashes. Then he said something he'll never forget. If she walked into the dark and didn't scream until morning, then the deal ain't sealed yet. I asked him what that meant, and he told me what was under the field. Long before the railroad, before Deadwind had a name or roads or fences, there were people here. Not townsfolk, not settlers, the kind of people who didn't draw maps, who whispered to the roots and left offerings to the things that walk when the sun folds in. They said there was a creature. Not God, not ghost, but memory made flesh. It fed on longing, on grief, on the echo of things left unfinished. And it always took form through fabric silk, mostly something smooth, something sensual. A vessel it could fold itself into like a lover pulling close in the night. They called it the mourner. It wore the shape of the lost, spoke in the voices of the dead, danced through dreams until the body gave up waking. And the wheat field behind Miller's house, it was planted over the place where they had tried to bury I. Not with stone, but with sacrifice. 3 women, 3 dresses, 3 promises. Evelyn, Mr. Miller's first wife, had been the second, and now Claire, she was meant to be the third. But the dress hadn't consumed her fully, not yet, because Mr. Miller had lied. There wasn't just one dress left there. Was one more, a final one, hidden in the cellar beneath the kitchen, sealed in salt and stitched with raven thread. The morning dress, black as midnight, lined in silver thread. That pulsed under lamplight, a dress not meant to seduce but to bind if she puts it on, he said. She can walk into that field and pull Claire back, but there was a catch. The dress would take someone. Not necessarily Claire, not necessarily me, just someone to wear the grief. The cellar door creaked open like it hadn't moved in years. Even the hinges seemed to shudder like they knew. What lay beneath them? The air changed as soon as I stepped down, thick with dust. Yes, but something else to expectation. At the bottom sat a long, narrow trunk. Not wood, not metal. It was made of something softer, almost like skin, that had been dried and stretched. Taut salt rings circled it 3 times unbroken. Mr. Miller didn't touch it. Didn't even cross the salt. He just handed me a knife. You're the one it followed. He said, it has your scent now. You're the only one who can walk back in. I should have said no. I should have thrown that knife down, turned, and never looked back. But Claire's face flashed in my mind, how she looked at that first night on the porch, smiling in the dusk light, before anything dark had taken hold of her, and I knew if I didn't try, she'd be gone. I broke the salt, opened the trunk. The morning dress shimmered like ink spilled on glass, cold to the touch, slick. And when I lifted it, I heard something, a breath not mine, a woman's close to my ear. You will be worn, it whispered. I put it on, and it was like stepping into ice, but not water ice, grief ice. Memories that weren't mine rushed through my head, weddings that never happened, children never born, mothers who waited by the window until their eyes turned to salt. I nearly collapsed under the weight of it. But the moment my feet hit the grass outside, the wind shifted, and the wheat parted like it recognized me, or feared me. The field opened, a narrow path leading to the black circle where nothing grew, where the air didn't move, where the mourner waited. And there she was, Claire, standing at the center, arms hanging loose at her sides, the red dress now dull and tattered, soaked at the hem with something dark. She didn't blink, didn't breathe. She wasn't here anymore, but the thing beside her, the one in shadows, it saw me. Its faces twisted in confusion, not fear, not anger, but curiosity. It moved around Claire like a dog guarding a grave. And then as I stepped into the circle, the morning dress tightened. It clung to me like a vice, forcing my spine straight, my limbs rigid. And the creature recoiled. It knew this wasn't prey anymore. This was a binding. I raised my hand, and the wind died. Every stalk of wheat dropped flat. Claire's eyes fluttered, her lips parted, and she whispered, "Get it off me." But the red dress wouldn't release her. It held her like hands made of hooks. I stepped forward 1 pace. The creature snarled. Another step, and it lunged. It moved like smoke, but struck like iron. One moment it was a blur of limbs and black sinew faces howling in silence. And the next it hit me full force. I didn't fall. The morning dress wouldn't let me. It held my spine upright, anchored my feet to the dirt. And as the creature clawed and screamed, it couldn't touch me. Its fingers passed through the dress like it was made of fire. And each time it tried, its skin, if you could call it that, burned away in strips. The thing backed off, shuddering, its many mouths gasping without air. And then, the black wheat around us began to whisper, not with wind, with voices, dozens, hundreds. They rose like a hymn. She is worn, she is bound. She carries the grief. The morning dress wasn't just armor, it was ritual, a cage. And I was the luck. Claire's body sagged like her bones had given up, but I could see her fighting inside, her hands trembling, mouth twitching with panic. I stepped to her slowly. Every movement cost something. Memories pressed into me like fingerprints, and I saw Evelyn again, not in vision, not in ghost. In Claire, the red dress had taken on her mother's shape, stitched her sorrow into its seams. That's why it chose Claire. Blood remembers. But the morning dress remembered more. I reached for the red fabric on her chest, and the moment my fingers touched it, it screamed, not Claire. The dress had writhed, trying to leap from her skin, but the morning gown surged with light. Silver veins glowing like molten wire, and the field collapsed. Not physically, but time itself. I saw every girl who'd ever worn that cursed silk, saw them dancing, bleeding, gasping for air they couldn't swallow. Saw them trapped, and I saw me standing in the same spot I was now, but older, hollowed out, wearing the morning dress. Again and again, forever. That was the deal. If I pulled her back, I had to take her place. The dress whispered in my ear like a lover, sweet as poison in a silver cup. She walks free, if you never do. And Claire opened her eyes, real this time, blue, wet, human. Please, she breathed, don't leave me. I smiled, or tried to, when I tore the red dress from her shoulders. The creature screamed, all its faces melting in agony, as it was ripped backward through the black wheat. The circle burned white, the wind exploded outward, and when it was done, she was in my arms, sobbing, alive. But the morning dress? It had vanished beneath my skin. I could feel it there, tightening, waiting. I had saved her. But the field would need someone next time, and I'd already agreed. The years passed quiet, too quiet maybe. Claire left the Miller house for good 2 winters after that night. Married a schoolteacher from Carson Bluff, moved to a home that faced the sunrise, built herself a life full of daylight. She never spoke of the field again, never said a word about the red dress, the black one, or the thing we buried beneath the wheat. But I knew it stayed with her, same way it stayed with me. I stayed behind like I always figured I would. Mr. Miller passed on just before the railroad expanded. Left me the deed, the tools, and the silence. Sometimes I'd hear the wheat whispering after dusk, just a breath like a memory brushing against the window. And every now and then I'd wake up standing outside with dirt on my feet, and the feel of silk tightening around my chest. Though I hadn't worn that dress in years. Not since I sealed it beneath the floorboards of the cellar, under 4 inches of iron nails and a prayer. But grief don't rot. It waits. 10 years passed like a single page turning in the wind. Then one autumn morning a carriage rolled up the drive. I heard the creak of its wheels before I saw it. Heard the footsteps too, light, deliberate. She stood on the porch like she belonged to it. Hair longer, eyes wiser, but still Claire in her arms. A wooden box, long, narrow, no velvet ribbon this time. I found it, she said. I didn't have to ask what. The attic, she whispered. It was waiting for me. She opened the lid, and inside lay the morning dress, untouched, unaged, like it had never left my body, like it had simply stepped out when I wasn't. Looking, Claire's hands trembled. I think it's calling again. I asked her with every bit of calm I could muster. Who's it calling for? And she looked up at me with eyes that weren't entirely her own and said, My daughter. Her name was Lila, 7 years old. Hair the same soft gold as Claire had when she was young. Eyes were too old for someone who still held dolls. When she stepped out of the carriage behind her mother, she looked straight at me and smiled. But there was nothing childlike in it. That night she would sleep in the guest room, insisted on the attic. Said it was where the Red One dances. Claire tried to laugh it off, but her hands kept tightening around the teacup until the porcelain cracked. I stayed up late, sitting on the porch watching the wind churn through the wheat. It hadn't whispered in years. Low and steady like breath coming from the earth itself. And then, around midnight, I heard tiny footsteps above me. Soft, bare, too steady for a sleepwalker. I climbed the attic stairs in the dark, careful not to creak the boards. When I pushed open the hatch, Lila was standing in front of the trunk. It was open. Inside lay the mourning dress, and beside it, the red one, shimmering, fresh, like it had just been sewn. And Lila, she was whispering, she says I can dance forever, just like Mommy, just like you. I called her name. She turned slowly, and her face, it was hers. But the smile was someone else. That ancient curve of the lips I'd seen before, in Evelyn, in Claire, in the thing in the field. She stepped toward me, but the dresses didn't move. They just waited, coiled. Claire burst into the attic, wild-eyed, breathless. When she saw Lila standing there barefoot and glowing in the moonlight, she fell to her knees. "Don't take her," she whispered. "Take me again. Just leave her be." And the dresses, they lifted. Not by wind, by will. The red one curled around Claire's waist. The black one wrapped itself around my ankles like a cat claiming its master. And Lila stepped back. "I didn't put them on," she said. "They chose." The dresses moved like they remembered us. The red one wrapped Claire in a single sweep, its silk climbing her arms like it had fingers. No buttons, no laces, just hunger. The mourning dress found its way back to me. Tighter this time, less forgiving. It knew this was the last time it'd be worn. Lila stood between us, quiet now like the wind had stolen her voice. And then the house shook. Not from below, but from around. Like the world itself was bracing for what was coming loose. Claire reached for her daughter, but the moment her fingers brushed Lila's hand, the floor went black. Not dark, black, like ink poured from the ceiling downward, erasing every inch of light. And when the darkness cleared, we were in the field. But it wasn't wheat anymore. It was fabric, miles and miles of red silk rippling like water, stitched with names I couldn't pronounce. The sky above us pulsed like a living thing, veins of shadow threading through the stars. At the center of it all stood the mourner, no longer a creature, no longer a shape. It was now a mirror, tall, endless, reflecting every face I'd ever feared, every moment I'd buried. Claire dropped to her knees, dress fluttering like fire on her skin. She was sobbing. "It wants her. It always wanted the youngest." I stepped forward, the mourning dress growing heavier with each footfall. The mirror began to crack. One line, then two, then a spiderweb across the whole surface. And through the cracks I saw Lila. Not the one beside me, the real Lila. Trapped inside, eyes wide, hands pressed to the glass like she'd been buried there before she was born. The girl standing beside us? She wasn't Lila. She smiled again, and the teeth were too sharp. "Grief is fertile," she said, voice echoing across the silk, "and you've watered this field for decades." The mourner had taken her shape to fool us, to feed. Claire screamed and lunged forward, but the red dress bound her legs, dragging her down. I ran, not from fear, from choice, toward the mirror, toward the real Lila. The mourner reared behind me, a mass of mouths and sorrow and promises unkept. The mourning dress began to glow, hot, blinding, and as I reached the mirror, I saw my own face inside it. But younger, the man I used to be before the field, before the whispers, before I knew what silk could steal. And that man spoke one word: trade, trade. I didn't hesitate. I slammed both hands against the cracked mirror, and the world shattered. Not broke, not fell apart, shattered. Like I smashed the border between what's real and what should be stayed buried. The sound that came out of it was every scream I'd ever heard, folded into one long bending howl that ripped the sky open. Light poured through, not white, not gold, just remembrance. It burned the mourner. It peeled the false Lila back layer by layer, revealing no girl underneath, just cloth, thread, a dress made of faces. The red one tore itself from Claire and disintegrated mid-air. The mourning dress on my back fused to my spine, searing itself into me like a brand. And I knew there'd be no leaving this time. Not for me. But as the mirror split open, the real Lila fell forward, into my arms. She was crying. She was real. She was free. Claire rushed in and wrapped her in a mother's arms, rocking back and forth as the mirror crumbled behind them. And I stood there, watching. Because my feet weren't mine anymore. They belonged to the field now, to the dresses. The morning gown settled heavy on my shoulders, and from beneath the silk I felt time tug. Not forward, not back, sideways. Claire looked at me, tears on her cheeks. And she knew. She whispered something ill. Never forget. You always were the one who stayed. I nodded, smiled just once. And then I turned to face the wheat, which was already folding around me, welcoming me back like a long-lost thought. The mourner didn't resist. It bowed, then stepped backward. Into me, and together we vanished beneath the silk. Years passed. The wheatfield grew wild again, but no one ever harvested it. Claire moved far away, took Lila to the coast, where the wind smelled like salt. Instead of secrets, built a life made of sunlit porches, books read aloud by firelight, and rooms with no attics. She never spoke of the mourner again, not to neighbors, not to friends. But on Layla's 17th birthday, she sat her down and told her the truth. Told her about the dress that promised forever, and the field where sorrow grows. Told her about the man who stayed behind wearing black, stitched with memory. He wasn't my father, but he was the only man who ever looked grief in the eye and stepped forward. Lila listened, didn't interrupt, didn't cry, just stared out the window, quiet as frost on glass. And then she asked, "Why does the attic door still open at night?" Claire went still, because it did even in this new house, this safe place by the sea. The attic door clicked open every night at 12:01. Never earlier, never later. No wind, no hinges creaking, just. Claire walked to the hallway, and sure enough, the door was ajar behind it, nothing but dust and beams. Except that night, there was something new on the floor, right in the center, a box long, narrow. No ribbon. No name, just waiting. Claire didn't open it. She simply turned to Lila and said, "Lock the attic. If it knocks, don't answer. If it whispers, don't listen. And if you ever feel silk on your skin without putting it there." She paused, then knelt, cupped her daughter's face in her hands, and whispered, "Run."